Hi everyone, my name is Tundele and you are welcome to the Africa History Channel, where we bring to you snippets of African history from the perspective of Africans themselves. We're on the 5th episode of the 6 that we're doing on the 1851 Bombardment of Lagos, and many thanks for coming on the journey with us so far. I appreciate all your feedback and everything that you told us about it, and we're trying to make this better as we go on. Let's get started with this episode where we talk about Ogunwomiro, the Battle of Saltwater in this series. We started the series from the 1300s and we are now in 1835. The Oba of Lagos, Oluwale, had just committed suicide, dying childless, after the Akarigbere chiefs, led by the Eletu Odibo, had petitioned the empire the Lagos ruling class had come from, Benin, to effect his removal. The Eletu Odibo was at the height of his influence, and many spoke of him as a potential Lagos version of what Basharuga had been in the Oyo Empire 7 decades earlier. But the dead king had an able, wealthy, and ambitious younger brother, Prince Kosoko, who many believed should have been the one who would succeed him to the throne. But it was at this point that the Eletu Odibo decided to exact the revenge for a personal vendetta against Prince Kosoko. Some years earlier, a beautiful woman had been betrothed to the powerful Eletu Odibo, but the dashing young Kosoko had gone into an ill-advised relationship with the woman and then went on to marry her in spite of the Eletu Odibo's protestations. Perhaps Kosoko did not care at this time because he did not see himself as being in line to succeed the throne, since his elder brother Oluwale would succeed their father and Idewu's children would succeed him after he died. So he was unbothered about the Eletu Odibo's wrath, since his foremost power was in his vestment with the authority to oversee the selection and installation of Obas. But as it stood, fate had brought the kingship to Kosoko, and he was now in the power of the Eletu Odibo. Rather than install Kosoko, the Eletu Odibo led the chiefs to invite the exiled Adele, Kosoko's uncle, to return to the throne. Hence, Adele returned to the throne in 1835. We discussed Adele in the last episode, so check it out in the description. His wealthy new wife, Efunroye Tinubu, returned to Lagos with him and allied with the Eletu Odibo. After reigning for only 2 years in this second installation, Oba Adele Joshun passed on. For a second time in such a short period, Kosoko bid for the throne he believed was rightfully his. But his opponents were now stronger, with the Eletu Odibo matching him politically and Efunroye Tinubu matching his wealth. Together, they were able to block his second bid, and they supported Adele's son and Efunroye's stepson, Oluwale, to take the throne of Lagos in 1837. With Adele's death, Efunroye Tinubu married the powerful war chief Yesufu Bada Obadino, securing his support for Oluwale's reign. At this time, there was another wealthy female slave trader in Lagos aside Efunroye Tinubu. Her name was Princess Okpolu, and she was Prince Kosoko's sister. Okpolu owned 1,400 slaves, and she was seen as a commercial and social rival to Efunroye Tinubu. And the Eletu Odibo saw an opportunity to both attack Kosoko's interests and solve Tinubu's problems. They agreed to accuse Okpolu of witchcraft and causing the death of children in Lagos. However, the diviners who investigated such cases found Okpolu innocent, and the matter should have died there. But Eletu Odibo and Efunroye Tinubu were able to prevail on Oba Oluwale to banish Okpolu from Lagos. For this reason, Kosoko, Okpolu, and Oshilokun's other children declared war on Oluwale, Eletu Odibo, and Tinubu with the intention of placing Kosoko on the throne forcibly. This war, remembered in Lagos tradition as Ogunwewe Koko, the War of the Cocoyam Leaves, was lost by Kosoko's side, but he was able to flee into exile along with his sister and his war captain, Ushoditakpa, further west than any Oba of Lagos had gone, to the rival Dahomian port of Wida, where his maternal grandfather was from. After this war, the Eletu Odibo then took the vendetta to another level when he exhumed the body of Kosoko's mother from where she was buried and dumped her remains unceremoniously in the lagoon. Contemporary records say that after this, undisguised hatred was all that existed between the two men. Oba Oluwale would only rule for 4 years. In an unfortunate accident, lightning struck the gunpowder store in the palace, causing an explosion in which the king was caught. His death opened the succession once again, and Kosoko tried for the throne the third time. Yet, Eletu Odibo was still alive, and along with Efunroye Tinubu, rather than allow their enemy in, the duo decided to offer the throne to Kosoko's other uncle, Akitoye. He heeded their call and ascended the throne in 1841 as Oba Akitoye. Once more, Kosoko had lost out to Eletu Odibo and Tinubu. Seething, he returned to Wida to continue as a slave trader. Akitoye himself was a slave trader and was friendly with the biggest Brazilian trader in Lagos at the time, Jose Domingo Martinez. They were so close that one of Akitoye's sons was Martinez's ward in Bahia in Brazil, being educated in the best Brazilian schools at the time. Considering that Akitoye was also allied with Efunroye Tinubu, one of the leading African slave traders in the leading African slave trading port at the time in Lagos, the narrative that Akitoye was an anti-slavery king does not hold up. In an attempt to finally end the decades of dynastic struggles that were threatening to tear the kingdom apart, Akitoye decided to make peace with his nephew, Kosoko. He invited Kosoko back to Lagos from Wida, in spite of the vehement protests of the Eletu Odibo and Efunroye Tinubu opposing such a move. Tinubu is recorded as having told him that he was being naive, but Akitoye was committed to his peacemaking venture. He sent his Portuguese friend Martinez to bring Kosoko from Wida on one of his ships and granted his nephew the title of Oloja, which means owner of Ereko Market. He granted him land and the right to set up courts in Lagos. In disgust, the Eletu Odibo decided to leave the town and went to Badagry with his supporters. Kosoko began to gather support from among the sidelined Idaho chiefs, the war chiefs, with the help of Ushoditakpa, of course, and from the now large Muslim community in Lagos. As expected, in time, a rivalry developed between Kosoko's court and Oba Akitoye's court, as the Eletu Odibo had predicted. There really cannot be two Obas in one town. Akitoye therefore resolved to invite the Eletu Odibo back into Lagos to balance out Kosoko's power. Hearing this, Kosoko declared that if Akitoye recalled his great enemy, he would have no choice but to make himself the Oba of Lagos. He sent his town crier throughout Lagos declaring, "Tell that child in the court to be careful, for if he is not careful, he will be punished." Akitoye sent out his own town criers in response. "I am like a pin firmly driven into the ground, which is always hard to root out, but ever remains firm." Kosoko's town crier responded with a new message: "I am the digger who always roots out a pin." So, back and forth they went. Akitoye eventually succeeded in convincing the Eletu Odibo to return, and as the powerful chief prepared to come back to Lagos, it became clear that war was inevitable. The Akarigbere chiefs and the war chiefs, like the Abagmo and the Ashogmo, lined up behind Akitoye, while the Idaho chiefs, as well as powerful warriors like Oshoditakpa, Agenia, and Iposu, stood with Kosoko. In addition, Akitoye reached out to the Egba for support through Efunroye Tinubu, while Kosoko got support from the Ibadan through his relationship with the then leader of the town, Bashorun Oluyole. He also got the support of the Ijebu because they were enemies of the Egba who were supporting Akitoye, and the Dahome through his years of trading in Wida, and also because they were Egba enemies. The year was 1845, and the stage was now set for the war that will become known as Ogunmiro, meaning the Battle of Saltwater. As the fighting got desperate, Kosoko's troops laid siege to the palace for 3 weeks and cut off the supply of fresh water to the palace, causing Akitoye and his followers to drink salt water, which gave the battle its name. Kosoko would eventually capture his greatest enemy, who had denied him the throne 3 times, the Eletu Odibo, in this war. In payment for the desecration of his mother's remains, Kosoko drowned him in the lagoon, also denying him a burial. By this time, Akitoye had accepted defeat, and he fled through the Agboyi Creek into the lagoon and went northwards. Oshoditakpa guarded this pass, but he granted the defeated Oba safe passage because while Akitoye was their rival, he had only allowed them back into Lagos in seeking to make peace. He explained it away to Kosoko by telling him that Akitoye put them in a trance with his mystic juju powers and passed. It will turn out to be a miscalculation on Oshoditakpa's part. Akitoye went up to Abeokuta to take refuge with Egba allies. Because he had been a claimant for so long, Kosoko realized the threat of having another living claimant who would pose for the throne. He sent to the Egba demanding for the head of Akitoye, but the Egba ignored him, instead providing Akitoye all he would need, including armed escorts to settle in the town favored by deposed Lagos Obas for exile, Badagry. When Kosoko was crowned, Efunroye Tinubu went to Badagry to join Akitoye, continuing her trade from the town she had first settled with her then kingly husband 13 years earlier. Once Kosoko took over, he took control of the trade in Lagos by expelling Akitoye's favored traders like Domingo Martinez and installing his own men. Of this, Samuel Ajayi Crowther wrote, "It appears from all accounts that all the property of the Portuguese slave dealers, about 4 of whose number traded with Akitoye, was plundered by Kosoko's soldiers, who scarcely left them with a shirt on their back." So the year is 1845, and we are only 6 years from the 1851 bombardment of Lagos. Join me in the concluding episode of this series, where we bring in the Saro, Anglican missionaries, and the British consuls as we finally get to 1851. Don't forget to help the channel grow by giving it a like, share, comment, and also subscribe. And please turn on your notification button so that you can receive notifications when we put up new videos. You can also buy my books, Afonja the Rise and Afonja the Fall, in the links in the description below. See you next time.